I must say, I'm rather enjoying the opportunity to say words which I wouldn't normally say um, on YouTube or in real life, and the Greek newspapers have had a whale of a time. I've been looking for the original article from the uh, Eleftheri Ora, and I can't find it. What I can find are articles which tell me that the English footballer Stan Collymore, the veteran English footballer Stan Collymore, uh, has tweeted a copy of the front page of this newspaper, and then the Greek newspapers today are full of the fact that the Express has printed the front page of this newspaper, and indeed, Eleftheri Ora has printed the front page of this newspaper, and they all seem very excited by the fact that Greeks have reacted badly to Rishi Sunak's peak and petulance, and they don't like the idea that Sunak has snubbed the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. Sunak claims that the situation is very clear and that he's told George Osborne, the chairman of the British Museum, who was also, of course, the Chancellor in the first part of this 13-year run of Conservative administration, that he is not prepared to accept that the marbles are anything other than British, and that unless Greece accepts that fact, they cannot be even loaned to Greece. So, but what is so extraordinary is that was precisely the language that Kyriakos Mitsotakis was using on the Sunday morning BBC TV programme when he was interviewed. He was talking not about repatriation but reunification of the marbles in the place where they were originally sited. Not exactly, of course, because they're on they're on a site slightly away from the Acropolis itself, on a site where a large museum was built, partly at the expense of the people who were already living in houses in that area. In fact, I know of one old man who was thrown out of his house with promises of compensation, which never came to fruition before he died. And he was made homeless by that museum. I think on those grounds alone, we should make sure that museum is put to good purpose because he died for it. And I could imagine a situation where the marbles were put together back on the Acropolis itself. They won't be. They will be put together in the Acropolis Museum, which is across the road. But nevertheless, they will be in the same sunshine as they were intended to be, and as you go round that museum today, you will see gaps for the artifacts which are currently in the British Museum. There are, of course, also gaps for those artifacts which are lost in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, it's a moot point whether there would be more gaps had the marbles not been taken to Scotland by a British peer and effectively taken to a place of safety from the War of Independence against the Ottomans. At the time, the Parthenon was being used as a place for storing ammunition, and a perfectly legitimate agreement was entered into by the then ruler, which was the Ottoman Empire. Now, Greece would argue, quite rightly, that even if the Ottomans had been occupying Greece for 400 years, they weren't the legitimate owner of the marbles. Yeah, it's a confused story, and indeed, one might take the same sort of story with the original first dwellers of either America or Australia. 400 years is a long time for an occupying power to be in charge of a country. Long enough for that power to consider itself as the owner of that country, the owner of all the artifacts in it. I would have thought 50 years is enough. And there is the confusion, because we have many different situations where in this country, in that country, we accept that the new rulers are the new rulers, and so on. And a new government comes in which may not have a full command of the popular vote. A government which barely scrapes 30 members, 38 members or so, 39 members. Does this define the way that the country will move from here on? This idea of legitimacy is very questionable, and I think it lies at the heart of the future of the Elgin marbles. And so rather than talking about return or theft, I think the language of Kyriakos Mitsotakis was absolutely right. And I've been waiting to hear this language for a very long time. Whether the marbles are returned as a form of repatriation, or whether they're returned as a form of reunification, the chances of them being sent back to the UK, sent back to the British Museum after they have been reunited with their sister sculptures on the in the Parthenon Museum in Greece, in Athens, I think is very slight. And why should they be returned to Britain? Britain has been hosting them for the last 200 years and has looked after them relatively well. And now it's time to give them back. Now it's time to see them back in their home. And we should welcome that move. In fact, we should make every effort to facilitate it. And both the British Museum and the British government is being rather silly. Setting precedents. Yes, precedents can be set, but a precedent that we take, where we take the initiative. And the idea that we are forbidden from doing this because there is a law, well, you can understand why Rishi Sunak, who's so keen to make laws to change reality at the moment, to change the fact that something is considered unsafe into something that is legally defined as safe. Well, yeah, I can understand why Rishi Sunak would be such a guardian of spurious laws which try to define things into existence, because they're bad laws. And we should as quickly spurn that 1963 law as we should spurn any attempt to enforce a law which defines something that the Supreme Court in our country has already pronounced on. So Rishi Sunak has a good deal to think about, not least his international reputation and the reputation of our country, which has been so damaged by his stupidity. And so, yes, I must say, when it comes to Eleftheri Ora, not a newspaper I would ever read today or in the past. I don't know. In fact, I don't remember Eleftheri Ora when I was living in Greece. But I will remember the headline, which contained, as I said, language I'm reluctant to repeat. And in fact, I don't intend to repeat it. I intend to slap it up as some sort of banner for this particular video. There you are.